7 people are floating in space, unaware they are already inside a funeral pyre. A tiny piece of foam had struck a fatal blow just 81 seconds after launch, but for 16 days, no one told the crew. They spent their final days laughing and doing science while the clock ran out on their lives. This is how a suitcase-sized mistake became a national tragedy. On January 16, 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia climbed into a clear Florida sky. Everything looked perfect, but hidden in the roar of the engines was a disaster. A block of insulating foam, about the size of a suitcase, broke off the external fuel tank. At this height, the air is thin, but the speed is incredible. The foam was light, but the shuttle was moving so fast that it turned into a deadly projectile. The physics of the hit were simple, but devastating. The energy of a moving object is calculated by taking half its mass and multiplying it by its speed squared. Because the shuttle was traveling over 1,500 miles per hour, that light piece of foam hit the left wing with the force of a high-speed cannonball. It slammed into the leading edge of the wing at over 500 miles per hour. This part of the wing was covered in reinforced carbon panels. These panels are built to survive the 3,000-degree heat of returning to Earth, but they are very brittle. The foam punched a hole right through the wing. Later tests showed the breach was likely 16 inches wide. On the ground, high-speed cameras caught the impact, but the footage was too blurry to show the true damage. NASA managers watched the video the next day and decided it was just a minor issue. They had seen foam fall off before, and nothing bad had happened. They called it a maintenance problem and moved on, leaving the 7 astronauts to their fate. While the crew worked on science experiments in orbit, a war was brewing inside NASA. The engineers on the ground were terrified. They formed a team to analyze the debris and realized the wing could be compromised. They begged their managers to get high-resolution photos of the shuttle while it was in space. They wanted to use powerful military spy satellites to look at the damage, but the mission managers said no. Linda Ham, the head of the management team, stopped the request from moving forward. She argued that the photos probably would not show enough detail anyway. The engineers were told that they needed to prove the shuttle was unsafe, rather than the managers proving it was safe. This was a dangerous shift in thinking called the normalization of deviance. If a problem happens often enough without causing a crash, people start to think the danger has disappeared. Rodney Rocha, a chief engineer, was one of the few who tried to fight back. He even wrote a long email calling the decision to ignore the damage irresponsible. He felt in his gut that something was wrong, but he never sent that email. He was afraid of jumping the chain of command or causing trouble for his career. In a rigid hierarchy, the voices of the experts were silenced by the confidence of the managers. The crew was even sent an email telling them the foam strike was nothing to worry about. Commander Rick Husband replied with a joke, having no idea that the left wing of his ship was already broken. The most tragic part of the Columbia story is that a rescue was possible. If NASA had admitted there was a problem by the 4th day of the mission, they could have saved everyone. The sister ship Atlantis was already being prepared on a nearby launchpad. If the ground crews had worked 3 shifts a day and skipped a few non-essential tests, Atlantis could have launched by February 10th. The plan would have been the most daring mission in human history. Columbia would have to stay in orbit for 30 days, which was the absolute limit of its supplies. To save air, the 7 astronauts would have to stay in their bunks and sleep for 12 hours a day. They would have to stop all exercise and move as little as possible to keep carbon dioxide from building up in the cabin. Once Atlantis arrived, the 2 shuttles would have met in space. Because they could not dock together, the astronauts would have moved from one ship to the other using a tether during a grueling series of spacewalks. The rescue crew would have moved the Columbia astronauts one by one. Finally, the empty Columbia would have been steered into the ocean by remote control. It was a high-risk plan that would have cost billions of dollars, but it was the only way to bring the crew home. NASA never even considered it because they refused to believe the wing was actually damaged. On February 1st, Columbia hit the atmosphere at 18 times the speed of sound. The crew joked about the orange glow outside, unaware that fire was already pouring into the left wing. Superheated plasma, reaching 3,000 degrees, melted the aluminum skeleton from the inside out. In mission control, sensors began to fail. First, hydraulic readings vanished, then tire pressures flatlined. Commander Rick Husband started to respond with, "Roger," before the signal cut forever. Aerodynamic forces tore the weakened wing away, and the shuttle disintegrated over Texas. The 7 astronauts were lost because the people meant to protect them chose comfort over the truth. Their legacy changed spaceflight forever, ensuring that no warning is ever ignored again.